As part of the USC Dornsife Los Angeles Times poll, we asked voters about two very important measures that would dramatically change California's criminal justice system if they pass this November. The first was on the death penalty, Proposition 34.
Proposition 34 would replace the death penalty with life without possibility of parole.
Over the last few years, opponents of the death penalty, supporters of Proposition 34, have shifted from a moral argument against the death penalty to a fiscal argument. The idea that all the money we spend on maintaining inmates on death row can or should be spent in other areas. And that has built the levels of support for the abolition of the death penalty in California. But when you ask state voters overall, the majority of Californians, and by a pretty big margin, still do support the death penalty. And so while the initiative can still build support toward passage, even the shift of argument does not seem to have moved sufficient votes to change the likely outcome.
Republicans tend to be very strong in opposition, and pluralities of Democrats and independents tend to favor it. It was surprising that the information about the costs did not sway more people. The proponents say it's going to save over $100 million a year, and the legislative analyst says it could save over $100 million in the first few years annually, and then as much as $130 million a year, which is a pretty big savings. And at a time of difficult, economic circumstances, you would have thought that argument might have had more resonance, but it didn't.
Even though Californians tell our pollsters they are still strongly in support of the death penalty, it does appear that they're reconsidering their historic support for the 3 strikes and you're out measure that first passed on the ballot all the way back in 1994.
The USC Dornsife LA Times poll found that there was support for the proposition by a margin of more than 3 to 1. There was 66% of voters who responded to the poll said that they supported it. Only 20% said they did not.
But as the state goes through year after year of severe budget crisis, California voters are beginning to look for a way to save money. And while they want to see violent criminals punished, it looks like they're heading toward adjusting 3 strikes and you're out.
What was interesting actually about the poll is that the support for Proposition 36 was across the board. Even conservatives, even a majority of conservatives supported changing the 3 strikes law.
They're saying if that 3rd strike isn't violent, perhaps 25 years to life in prison is too severe a penalty.